January 1977. Temperatures crashed to -38, Lake Erie turned to ice, natural gas vanished, and entire cities were brought to their knees. In the heart of America's coldest winter ever, families burned furniture just to survive. What pushed the nation to the breaking point? You remember the cold, but what really happened next will remind you why that winter changed everything. Thermometers plunged to numbers that felt impossible. In Buffalo, readings dropped to -38 degrees Fahrenheit, colder than most freezers, colder than some Alaskan towns that same week. Pipes burst inside homes, frost crept along the walls, and car engines froze solid before sunrise. The cold was not just a number on a weather map. It invaded every room, every breath, every layer of clothing. Across the Midwest, Ohioans woke to -25. Diesel fuel turned to jelly, trucks stalled on highways, and the Ohio River froze thick enough for people to walk across. In Cincinnati, the thermometer never climbed above freezing for 26 straight days. Schools closed, factories idled, and the air carried a sharpness that burned skin in seconds. Lake Erie, usually restless and churning, locked up under a sheet of ice stretching from Buffalo to Toledo. By late January, the lake had frozen solid, an event so rare that even the oldest residents could not remember the last time. Snow piled on top of the ice, drifting into walls that blocked out roads and buried cars to their roofs. January 1977 set records that still stand. Buffalo's average temperature for the month was just 13.8 degrees. In towns across Indiana, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, the story repeated: pipes bursting, windows icing over, families huddling in kitchen corners, counting the hours until sunrise. The cold was unrelenting, and for many, it was the first taste of fear that winter would bring. A stubborn dome of high pressure settled over the Arctic, twisting the jet stream into a locked position that refused to budge. This invisible barricade trapped frigid air across the eastern United States, funneling wave after wave of Arctic cold into the heartland. Meteorologists studying synoptic maps in January 1977 saw the same pattern day after day, a loop in the jet stream that dipped deep into the Midwest, then stalled. Cold air pooled over the Ohio Valley, unable to escape. The result was a standstill. Rivers turned to ice, highways froze solid, and the usual January thaw never arrived. The Ohio River, a working highway of commerce, frozen solid for days. In places, the ice grew thick enough to support the weight of people crossing on foot, an event not seen in decades. Barges and boats sat motionless, locked in place by nature's grip. Factories and schools, dependent on natural gas, faced a new threat as supply lines faltered. Pipelines froze, and gas pressure dropped so low that entire neighborhoods lost heat. President Carter, confronted with the scale of the emergency, pleaded with Americans in a televised address: set thermostats to 65 during the day, 55 at night. Even with these measures, the demand for energy far outpaced what the system could deliver. By January 23rd, the cold had become a trap. The blocking high refused to move, and every forecast pointed to more of the same. The stage was set for something even worse, a blizzard that would take everything already stretched to the breaking point and push it past the edge. The first gusts struck Buffalo just before noon on January 28th, ripping across the city at 45 miles per hour, then surging to 75. Within minutes, the world outside vanished. Snow that had lain for weeks was torn from rooftops and fields, hurled sideways in a blinding wall. Visibility dropped to nothing, a whiteout so complete that people stepping outside lost all sense of direction, sometimes just feet from their own doors. The Department of Transportation closed highways in rapid succession, but for more than 1,000 cars already on the roads, it was too late. Engines stalled, batteries died, and drifts climbed over windshields, burying vehicles in minutes. Rescue became impossible. Emergency crews abandoned their own trucks, forced to crawl through snow tunnels or wait for help themselves. For 48 hours, Buffalo stood still. Schools, factories, and entire neighborhoods disappeared under snowdrifts as high as houses. Power lines snapped, natural gas lines froze. The city's infrastructure, already strained by weeks of cold, failed almost at once. Official tallies counted 29 dead in western New York before the storm ended, most lost to the cold, some found frozen in cars, others just steps from safety. The blizzard's grip was total. In those hours, survival meant staying put, hoping the wind would finally let go. John Miller sat in his sedan on the Kensington Expressway, engine idling, watching the gas gauge drop as the blizzard swallowed the world outside. He had left work early, thinking he could beat the storm home. Within minutes, his car vanished under drifts, snow sealing every door. The radio faded to static. For 2 days, Miller survived on the last warmth from his heater, rationing sips of coffee and listening for rescue that never came. When his fuel ran out, he wrapped himself in his coat and waited, breath turning to frost on the glass. Across town, Martha Ellis gathered her children in the kitchen, the only room where a faint warmth lingered. The furnace had gone silent after the gas cut off. With no wood left, Martha broke apart the dining table, feeding the pieces into a small fireplace. Chairs, picture frames, even a set of shelves, anything that would burn became fuel. The smell of scorched varnish filled the air, but it was better than the cold creeping in from every crack. In a darkened house just outside Buffalo, a mother went into labor as the wind battered the windows. Roads were impassable. Ambulances could not reach her. Neighbors braved the storm on foot, carrying blankets and candles. The baby arrived just before dawn, wrapped in quilts and hope, as the world outside remained frozen and silent. Natural gas demand surged to twice the usual winter peak, but supplies ran dry. Families like Miller's and Ellis's faced the cold with what little they had, isolated by snow and silence, waiting for help that seemed impossibly far away. By the second day of whiteout, hope arrived not from official rescue teams, but from ordinary people with snowmobiles and a stubborn sense of duty. In Buffalo, Jim Callahan and his friends from the Lake Erie Beach Comic Club gathered at dawn, their machines lined up like cavalry against the storm. 50 snowmobiles roared out, headlights cutting through swirling snow, as neighbors radioed in desperate pleas for help. The club's roster became a lifeline, names checked off as riders set out, sometimes in pairs, sometimes alone, to search for stranded drivers and deliver medicine to the sick. Over the course of the blizzard, these volunteers pulled more than 300 people from buried cars and carried them to makeshift shelters, school gyms, church basements, even private homes opened by strangers. Some snowmobilers made run after run, guiding the elderly through chest-deep drifts or hauling children wrapped in blankets. By nightfall, the city's first wave of evacuees, over 5,000 in total, owed their lives to these citizen rescuers who refused to wait for the cavalry. Tanks and snowcats from the National Guard rolled into Buffalo as the blizzard's grip refused to loosen. General Hancock directed the first wave, 12 tracked vehicles, engines roaring, pushing through drifts as high as rooftops. Their arrival brought the first real hope in days. Roads that had vanished under 30 feet of snow began to reappear, one lane at a time. On the thruway, guardsmen pulled survivors from cars sealed shut by ice, some so weak they could barely stand. Clearing those routes allowed food, fuel, and medicine to reach neighborhoods cut off since Friday. The damage left behind was staggering. Roofs collapsed under the weight, cars flattened, and the city's losses surged past $2 billion. Even months later, the scars remained. Families rebuilt, but the memory of that winter changed habits for good. Surveys showed that by the next year, 85% of households kept emergency kits stocked. Today, people rely on technology for comfort and safety. In 1977, survival depended on grit, preparation, and the power of neighbors coming together. Today, winter warnings trigger panic over inches, not weeks. Yet the record lows of 1977, minus 25 degrees in Ohio, Lake Erie, frozen solid, still stand. That winter proved survival means more than comfort. It means community. The cold didn't break us. It showed what we're made of. Share your story below.